my God. That's right. Then I switched it because I didn't want to do it in the summer to Passover.
And then I got to read the Shema and the beginning of the Vehafta. And now I'll be quiet and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. That's lovely. That's right. That's what it was when I inherited it. And then it's very hard to get guests and people to come in August. So we changed it. So, hi, everybody. How are you? I haven't seen you in a while. Um, I got a PC. You're on my PC, so I shouldn't have any trouble as I have had for the last few times. And I'm recovering from hernia surgery that I had last week, but I'm better. But I don't recommend it unless you need it. It is very painful, but I feel like it's a good sign that I'm already up and around. So that, so that's good. Yes, thank you, Brad. So,
Wait, happy birthday.
tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Happy birthday tomorrow.
Tomorrow, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's nice. When I was a kid, it was always in the summer and all my friends were at camp and I would be very jealous of my sisters whose was during the year and I didn't have friends. Till I went to camp and then when my parents started sending me a huge cake at camp for everybody, so then I felt better. Anyway, this is an amazing Torah portion, and it has so much in it, and I'm going to be doing some of it today, and then I'm going to be doing a totally different part tomorrow because I'm teaching Chevra Torah tomorrow. But it's Ve'et Hanan is the name of the portion or parsha. It's the second parsha in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, in Hebrew, does anybody know what the name of the book of Deuteronomy is in Hebrew?
Words.
Devarim, words, exactly. Devarim, it's called. And it's very significant because almost the entire book is Moses speaking. I mean, it is Moses speaking until the very end and the last, interestingly enough, who wrote it. It says he died, and then it talks about him and it gives a little epitaph or epilogue about him. But the whole book is Moses speaking, very impassioned. It's like his living will. It's everything he wants to impart to the Israelites before he dies. And this is surprising scholarly-wise because what do we know about Moses and speech? Stutters, has a speech impediment. We don't know exactly what it is, but he had some kind of speaking issue. But the writers of the book of Deuteronomy or Devarim, you have two ways to go. Either the whole thing was given at Mount Sinai or it was written by scholars. If you go by different literary prophets and sages and scribes who wrote it at different times, these were, they think it was maybe the prophet Jeremiah or the school of prophets around that time. It's very eloquent, and they envision Moses very differently, very articulate, very eloquent, very poetic, very emotional. He's not, except the only emotions we really got from him, the first book is Moses isn't in, but in the other three books is what? What's his main emotion, would you say? Brad, did you say his main emotion was?
Anger.
Frustration and anger. And in this book, he has many more sadness and passion, plea, warning, care. I mean, he's a very much more human or emotional or an articulate speaker in this book. So it's a very special book. They call the writers of the book the Deuteronomists who wrote this book. And then they also wrote, according to the scholars, the book of Joshua, the book of Judges, and the book of Samuel, maybe, and Kings, possibly. Those are all narrative books with stories, very powerful stories. So we're going to look at this, and it's called, as I said, Ve'et Hanan, which means, and I pleaded. And I pleaded. And here right away, we're starting with a very powerful emotion of Moses. So let me put this up. Oh my God, what a pleasure. How easy is this compared to before? I can't even tell you. Let me just do this, make it a little bigger. If I can do it like this. Okay. No, that doesn't work. Okay. All right. So let's just start with the first two paragraphs. So who would like to read? Who would like to read? Ben, why don't you read?
Thank you, Rabbi. And I pleaded with the Lord at the time, saying, O Lord God, you've only begun to show your servant your greatest and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, the good hill country, and Lebanon.
So what's he asking?
I want to continue my trip and see this cool thing because I know how great you are, and let me have that last hurrah of seeing it or being there,
Why is he pleading?
to live, I guess, to live and
But
see
what
it.
happened? What had happened in the book of Numbers? What happened?
He hit the rock.
He hit the rock, and what was the result?
He was told he couldn't enter the promised land as
He couldn't
punishment.
enter. And Miriam is dead. Aaron is dead. He's the only one left. And he is telling the Israelites that I pleaded with God. So here he's being very emotional. And also, the way that he's approaching God is kind of a classic ancient Near Eastern way of approaching a king, where you first praise them and then you make your request, which, by the way, works today too. If you want a request, it's very nice to compliment the person first and then ask for the whatever you want. So he, please let me just see it. Let me just put my foot on the ground. Let me do this. And it's so poignant. It's so devastating, really. But what was the result, Ben? Is this too small? Do you want me to make it bigger?
No, I mean, I just get a little close to the screen, but it's good.
Okay.
But the Lord was angry with me because of you, and would not listen to me.
Who's
And the Lord,
you? Who's the you?
The people?
The people. This whole
the
book is
Israelites.
talking to the people. So, okay, we'll go on in a minute. Continue.
Thank you. And the Lord said to me, enough from you. Do not speak to me of this matter again. Go up to the top of Pisgah and
Pisgah. It's a mountain.
lift up your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and look at it for your eyes, for you shall not go over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he shall go over at the head of this people, and he shall put them in possession of the land that you shall see. So we reminded. So we
Remained.
reminded.
We
Sorry.
remained.
So remained in the valley opposite Beth
Beth
Peor.
Peor. So, okay. So, how do we feel about Moses at this point, and what do we think about God in this little paragraph?
Well, it's kind of out with the old and in with the new for
Okay.
Moses.
For Moses, yes.
New leadership, bringing some fresh youngsters.
He is 120, but he was kind of the unwilling leader who for 40 years took all the complaints and whining, and he does one little mistake and he's punished. He doesn't get that final reward.
So how do you feel about that?
I feel sorry for him.
Yes.
And I love that God says, and don't bring it up again.
Don't bring it up again. What else do you
Did he ever
notice?
accept his leadership?
Did who?
Did Moses ever accept the fact that he was said to
Yes.
be a leader?
Yes. I mean, we know that. We know that he was so devoted to being like on call for God that he wore that veil all the time, so that, if God called him, he would be able, he had this like holy light coming out of him, and he wore this veil and separated himself from the people. Yes, I think he did accept it. Susan.
So I think I used to like shed tears at this. This is so sad, but it's also life and reality. First of all, a new leader was needed to bring the people into Canaan and do the fighting, and that was Joshua. And Moses' leadership, Jonathan Sacks, Rabbi points this out, that he was tired, and Moses had changed, and he was exhausted. Who wouldn't be? I mean, it was a horrible, a very difficult task that he had in bringing the people over. And some of this is like the reality of death, and he gets to have a really good death. How many of us will have that? And if we look at that not so much as a mistake, as hitting the rock and the like, we look at it as, what happens to human beings. And he was, as I said, blessed by God for that. Now, why God didn't let him go over and say, and he could kiss the soil, but he let Moses see the land.
Let him see the land, finally.
Yes.
Ben, do you have your hand up?
Just one quick thought,
Yeah.
if I may, Rabbi.
Yeah.
This crime of Moses breaking the rock, maybe not so serious, but sometimes, maybe it was a bit of an excuse, kind of just tapping what Susan just said, how God was looking for a reason not to sort of phase Moses out. And he committed this infraction. Oh, that's it. You're out. So sometimes that happens even today in our relationships.
That's true. Okay, Brad?
Well, isn't he playing a little bit of the blame game there?
Yeah.
He's blaming the people. He's not assuming any responsibility for his own actions.
Yes, I agree with you. And when Susan said, well, Moses is really tired, and that's why he hit the rock, he was just worn out. But I think the blame game also is kind of a petulant old age kind of thing. It's not my fault, it's your fault. You brought this on. And but God wasn't having any of it, and it just probably reinforced the idea that Moses, your time is up. And as Susan said, he does have who knows? He ascended. We don't know. I mean, there's all these midrashim about how he died. We just don't know where he died because we didn't want to create a shrine or a place of worship for him. So that's why he's not. And actually, if you look at a classical Haggadah, Moses' name is not mentioned once in the Haggadah. In the traditional Haggadah, his name is not mentioned at all. In our more contemporary ones, we have his name, but he's not mentioned, and they say for the same reason that we shouldn't idolize Moses. But it's still, to start the Parsha with, and I pleaded with God, I don't know, we're talking about scholars who certainly canonized the Torah and divided the Torah into the different parshiot. It was just one long thing and they changed it. I almost feel like they were pretty old. A lot of these scholars and sages identified with that, that you don't want to retire. You don't want to retire, no matter how old you are. Most people, some people it's interesting that younger people say, oh, I'm going to retire at 50. Whereas older people say, I'm never retiring because it's so meaningful to be working. I think it's interesting. But anyway, that's how this section of Moses, this Parsha starts. And now he's going to begin his there's 6 discourses throughout the book, and we're starting with one, and there's some is a recap. Like what he's doing is he's reminding the Israelites of everything they went through, and we'll see that. But there's also this brand new thing, which Jan mentioned, if we get to it or not today, which is the Shema and the V'ahavta, and this idea of loving God. So, okay, so let's continue. Share. So easy now. What a pleasure. Okay, let's see. How do I do this? I'm going to move this down. Oh, here I am. Okay, so they're in this valley opposite Beit Peor. Okay, so now who would like to read? Cindy.
And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the rules that I am teaching you, and do them, that you may live and go in and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you.
Okay, so there's two things I want to point out. I want us to note, I don't think we have to actually write it down, how many times Moses talks about the land, mentioning the land over and over and over, and how in order for you to take possession of the land, he constantly thinks. Now, there's also this thing of statutes and rules. What's the difference between a statute and a rule? And in Hebrew, it's chok and mishpat, which really is like law or statute and something you'll be judged by. Mishpat comes from shofet, which means judge. So what's the difference? Why do they need to be divided, do you think? I mean, the sages and the commentaries have a very specific explanation, but I'm wondering what you think. Merle.
The statutes are a list, and the rules are how you should act on that list, or act on whatever's the list.
Give me an example. Can you give me an example?
If you break a rule, the statutes list what all the rules are, and if you break a rule, then you're probably going to be punished.
You wouldn't be punished if you broke a statute?
Well, I think basically they're pretty much the same. One is an action and one is a list.
Okay. Okay. Any other opinions of differences? Ben?
Thank you. To me, a statute would apply to all. The statute applies to everybody equally. Where a rule, I might have rules in my parents' house, or rules when I go to school, or rules of engagement here in Torah study. So the rules are for I say for the moment, but for the situation.
I've never heard that. I really like that. Thank you. That's really good. It makes sense, because that's not what the rabbis say, but I like that better, actually. Well, but it's a Hebrew word, but that doesn't matter. I love that. Susan, did you have your hand up?
I like that too. What I thought was the mishpat are the rules that are understandable, like you should not kill, you should not steal, and all of that. But hukat or the hukim are not that, like the dietary laws.
That's what the rabbis say. A chok is a law that you don't really understand why you do it,
Right.
but you do it anyway, which I personally have a problem with. But that's, and there's things like you're not supposed to mix linen and silk. Is it linen and silk? In your clothes. Why? I don't know. But that's a law, or that's a chok. And then the whole kosher thing those are called the statutes, where you don't question, you just do it. And the other ones, they totally make sense. They improve your life, or you can see how it's part of society. And the rabbis, they don't really have the answers either. They sort of say, well, it's to show your fidelity to God or your faithfulness or whatever, that you do them anyway. But probably, in my opinion, there were reasons for them that we don't know. I imagine that. I mean, I actually do know this about eating pork. That was like very revered by the Philistines, the pig. They worshipped it, they revered it, and so I guess eating it would be in some way consuming the Philistine god. So they said, no, you can't eat pig, you can't touch pig, you can't be around pig, something like that, because it was part of idolatry. And I suspect that some of these other chukim, these other statutes had reasons behind them that were understood. Maybe sometimes they don't explain things because they're obvious in the time. So you don't have to say anything. But anyway, Moses differentiates between statutes, chukim, and mishpatim. And I like this idea that mishpatim are the rules that are specific, and the statutes are general. I like that idea. So Ben, thank you. I thought that was really good. And Never heard it before, which makes it even more unique and great. You're thinking like a scholar, like a sage.
I've got some good rabbis teaching me.
Okay, so now here's another thing that's very interesting. Who is reading?
I
Cindy?
was.
Okay,
Yeah.
one more.
You shall not add to the word that I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who followed the Baal of Peor.
So Baal is a god, and I guess some of them started worshiping Baal, which was this god Baal was always very appealing to the Israelites. They constantly were straying over to worship Baal. But okay, so what does this mean? Don't add to the word or take from it. What does that mean?
Do it exactly.
And what does it mean to add to it?
Well, just not to change it and add your own thought or opinion as to what the rules are.
So the commentary, though, in the Talmud definitely changed things. They definitely changed things. Rebecca?
So then is there a difference between a commandment, a statute, and a rule? So
In
is
terms
the
of
10
adding
Commandments a statute or a rule?
rule.
Or is it just a commandment?
It's they're commandments. Well, they're actually not even commandments, they're utterances. But I would say they're mitzvahs, they're not chok. They're not a statute. If we're saying a chok means we don't understand the reason. We completely understand the reasons for the Ten Commandments. But I was reading a commentary that said that the rabbis did change things. They stopped the sotah thing where if you suspect a woman is an adulteress, you're supposed to make her drink this horrible potion and humiliate her in the community. And they also stopped stoning people who desecrated the Shabbat. And they stopped this idea that if your son, there's a quote, if your son, and it's only your son, interestingly enough, is a disrespectful and a drunkard and I think a slaggard or a laggard, and his parents agree, they take him to the town square and they kill him. So they did take some things and get rid of them. So the rabbis so then later commentaries were saying, how are they going to justify that the Talmud did make some changes? And we still make changes we still make changes. So what they decided was you can't add, like you can't say there are 20 days of Pesach. And you can't say there are 3 days of Pesach. You have to you can't add numerically to something to increase it or decrease it. That's how they came to understand this law, because otherwise the Talmudists were doing it all the time. They were arguing and changing things all the time or clarifying. I also I was thinking about people who celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas. Is that adding to the celebration or is that something totally different or celebrating? I don't know. Actually the Reform movement and then our temple changed it, just cut Rosh Hashanah to one day. And then Culture Boulevard Temple said, no, we're doing it 2 days. That's a traditional way. So that would have been definitely one of the things that this law or Hulk, I don't know if it's either one, rule would have addressed. So anyway,
in Israel, do they celebrate 1 day or 2 days?
I think in Israel, I think Rosh Hashanah is 2 days. All the other ones, like the 8th day of Passover and Sukkot and Shavuot, they only celebrate.
So it's
7.
not a calendar issue.
I don't think so. I think it is
diaspora.
I don't think so. I think it's 2 days in Rosh. I'm pretty sure. So, all right. But if I'm wrong, I'll let you know.
I'll ask my phone.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your phone right now. In Israel, do they celebrate? Where's Cher? Tell me. Okay. All right. So we're going to.
Maybe one is a day of worship and the other one is honoring a historical event as well. I don't know whether that makes a difference.
Well, but they're off. Everything's closed for 2 days, whatever the reason. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. So, Jan, do you want to read? right here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today. See, I have taught you statutes and rules as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. Keep them and do them, for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who when they hear all the statutes will say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.
Okay, so there's two things I want to point out
In
again.
Rosh
He
Hashanah,
men-
do they celebrate 1 or 2 days for Rosh Hashanah?
in Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. They said, first of all, he mentioned the land again, and then he said, people will see you following the Torah and you'll be considered a wise and discerning people. Do you think that's true? Do you think that there's something that people would admire from what the Israelites are doing, would be doing if they followed the Torah?
One would hope, but it certainly didn't seem to work out that way.
You know, though, I mean, the one thing that is momentous that the is Torah and is Jews gave is Shabbat, is a day of rest. It's momentous in the world, a day of rest, not just for you, but your servants, your workers, your animals, everything. This idea of letting everybody replenish is unbelievable. And then there's all the justice laws. There's a lot of human respect, love your neighbor as yourself. There's a lot of wisdom that now has become worldwide. So I do think it's true. I do think the Torah has, the Bible, the Torah for sure has, was a monumental document in terms of the way it viewed society, family, equality, justice, the poor, the rich, everything. So I agree with that actually. Okay.
America was founded on some of the ideals from the
Well,
Bible.
because they were all Christians, devout Christians who knew their Bible.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
So,
Bible came from Judaism. So in terms of, yes, they altered some, and added to
right.
alter or change, but they kept the basic premises, and American law is very similar to law in the Bible too.
Yes. And Thomas Jefferson actually had his own version of the Bible that I think he even published, but he created. Do you know about it, Douglas? Do you want to share what it is?
What? Thomas Jefferson's Bible?
Wait, Douglas is going to tell us.
Well, it's just been a long time since I looked at it, but it's about half an inch thick, and it's not the whole Bible. It's just certain sections that he has changed and made it more towards his philosophy. I had a copy of it. I don't know whether I still have it or not.
He removed all the supernatural events, all the, miracles and all that stuff, and just kept all of the ethical teachings and, all the wisdom of how to run a just society. And he felt that was the basis of the Bible, and he removed all the other stuff. So he was pretty known for that. And Cindy, do you have your hand up? Yes?
Yeah, while some holidays are celebrated for 1 day in Israel and 2 days in the diaspora, Rosh Hashanah is an exception, being celebrated for 2 days in both.
I was right. Yay.
And there's
Okay.
a lot of commentary, like some say it's considered one extended day, but
Right.
that's what the phone says.
Okay. Thank you. Susan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this was left over, but John Adams was a great fan of the Hebrew Bible.
Yes, I think they all were, and a lot of them knew Hebrew, even. If you were a scholar or certainly a minister, the Puritans definitely knew Hebrew. That's before them. They all knew Hebrew. They actually considered, for a while, I read, they founded Plymouth, making Hebrew their language of their colony, of their society, but then they decided not to. It was too hard. Okay, so who is reading? Just finish this, Jan. For what great nation is there?
For what great nation is there that a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call upon him? And what great nation is there that has statutes and rules so righteous as all this law that I set before you today?
Okay, so one more. No, let's stop. What's Moses's tone? I mean, again, I'm talking about him as being a totally different kind of guy. What's his tone here, would you say?
Stick to what I'm telling you and what we've done.
Yes, but he's saying in a way that's emotional, like make you proud. Be proud. He's trying to be inspiring. He's trying to, create some emotion, some pride, some open their eyes to how great this is, how special you are, or we are, how amazing it is that God, has given this to us. So I think, usually it's just God told me to tell you this, and God says this, and do this. But suddenly he's expressing his own personal feeling about the Torah, about all these laws. This is the first time I think we're getting a sense of Moses's emotion. He usually is very unemotional. So I feel like, does anybody else feel that? I feel that from this.
I feel like he is now at the end and he wants to make sure that the last words he pass on are just so meaningful and important to him to just please go forward and follow.
I agree. And the fact that, it says he pleaded with God, but I think he's also kind of pleading with the Israelites, with the people, to be aware and realize what it's how, the older people were trying to plead with the youth to understand how precious life is, how every day is a gift. We know that when we're older, but when we're trying to say, open your eyes, realize this, we have this impassioned desire to impart what we know and hope that it in some way is taken in by this younger generation. So I feel like that's what Moses is doing here. So it's, very emotional. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so okay, Brad, do you want to read? From here only, number 9, verse 9.
Only take care and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children, how on the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, gather the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on earth, and that they may teach their children so. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. This is the passage that a bit of this was what Rabbi was quoting in his message today, if I'm not mistaken.
I haven't read it yet. Who wrote it today?
Rabbi Nickerson.
Oh, he did? Oh, I didn't get a chance to read it yet. Which part?
At the beginning about the, can you scroll up?
Yes, I will. Yeah. Only take care.
Yeah, make it known. Yeah.
Make it known to your children.
Don't forget, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen and lest them depart from your heart. Make them known to your children and your children's children, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So this is also a new theme, I think, in the Torah, which is in this new book, this idea of teaching to your children. I don't remember it being written anywhere else in such a degree as here, to your children and your children's children. And that, so how you, and don't forget this unbelievable experience that you had. Again, this is emotional. And remember, you were at Sinai. You saw this, you experienced it, except this is interesting.
They didn't. These are the second generation.
That's right. Did they? Did they?
They weren't there. Their parents were, but their parents would have taught it to them. So
Well, the children would have been there because it was, I think, was anyone over 20 that didn't make it. But I think the children, and the women, according to the Midrash, the women were not, the women lived and prevailed because they refused to give their jewelry for the golden calf. But, yeah,
But isn't it said that, the Torah does not believe there isn't a concept of chronological time
right.
in the Torah, that we were all present,
I
all
was thinking of it.
generations.
You're
We were
right.
all there at Sinai.
So this is a message to us as well. Don't forget the miracles of Judaism, the miracles of the revelation of our teachings or whatever, and teach them to your children and your children's children. And we know that I think that Israelites, ancient Israelites, were probably more literate than many common populations in the ancient world because of this need to educate your children. And I think I've shared this before that in 500 BCE or 400 BCE, they found a written stylus, a written thing of an order from a quartermaster from the south to a quartermaster in the north in the Israelite army saying, we need oil and we need flour and we need, meat and all these things. It was a shopping list. But what was amazing is these were two common men writing to each other, and one could read that, it was like a lowly soldier was writing to it. It wasn't a scribe, it wasn't a prophet, it wasn't a royal person, it was just a soldier, and he could write. They could read and write, so that was showing that this idea of teaching your children was already hundreds of years old, I think, because the Torah was written in like 800, 900, 800, 700 BCE were when a lot of the scrolls were written. And the last one was written in 600 of Deuteronomy, and then canonized around 300 when the rabbis, or three or 400, started organizing it in order. Okay, so where are we? Back to this. Share.
Rabbi, I mean, that
Yes.
was, and again, that was Rabbi Nickerson's point in his
Right.
Devar Torah this morning, is that we learn through stories.
Right.
And stories have always been the mainstay of what's how knowledge is transmitted, is through story.
Even before you could read, exactly. Oral.
Mhm.
The oral tradition of telling stories, that's ancient, not just Jewish, but of course, telling the
The
stories.
Iliad, it was told as a story,
Absolutely.
not really written down, as I understand. It was just they would keep telling the same story over and over.
Well,
Yes.
the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were not written down till like 1,000 years after they occurred. So they supposedly occurred in 1800 BCE. So the earliest, it was like 1,000 to 800 BCE. So these are stories that were handed down for hundreds of years among the Israelites. Okay, so then we have this whole thing about the Ten Commandments. Then the God spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. Oh, well, this is interesting because it's kind of amorphous in the actual event. In the book of Exodus, it's like then God speaks and whatever. But here, it's very well described what the experience was. So, what was the experience, Rebecca? Why don't you read? Then the Lord spoke to you.
Then the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. And he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is, the 10 Commandments. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you the statutes and rules, that you might do them in the land that you are going over to possess.
Okay, so also I've read a note that writing something on stone is considered very formal, very permanent. When you're making like a monument or you're recording a very important event, you carve it on stone so that it lasts forever. Though we know this one didn't last forever because Moses smashed them and he had to recarve them. Okay, go a little further.
Therefore, watch yourselves very carefully, since you saw no form on that day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Beware, lest you act corruptly by making a carved image for yourselves in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth.
And there's one last thing.
And beware, lest you raise your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them. Things that, can you scroll up that?
Oh, sure. Hold on.
Things that the Lord your God has allotted to all the people under the whole heaven.
Okay, let's stop here. So first of all, there's this description of animals and birds and fish and everything. And I get the feeling, why did they have to mention so many? And then the sun, the moon, and the stars. Why do you think they were so specific?
Well, weren't these worshipped as well? Certainly the sun, moon, and stars were, and many of the animals in Egypt.
That's what I think. He was mentioning, they would know. It would be like today, if they said, don't mention the Trinity, don't worship the Trinity. But we know what that refers to today, or don't worship the Indian in India, what they do, or don't worship bulls, or whatever. We would know what they're referring to. So these were familiar images or gods of other nations. Yes, Merle.
Aren't they considered idols
Well,
in
to
a way?
to us, but not them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they were considered
Right.
idolatry. Well, I mean, some of those sculptures were magnificent. The temples, I mean, they were so beautiful, but they're considered false gods.
Right.
But then the last sentence is really interesting. I just want to put it up there again because the last sentence is, hold on, that the Lord your God allotted to all the peoples. It should be all the peoples under heaven. So suddenly it's what's this text saying? What is Moses saying? That these other gods were for the other people. Only you get Adonai, Eloheinu, whatever, Hashem. But that the implication is it was God's will that they should worship these other deities, but only you get the real God. Now that idea changed, didn't it, over the generations? How did that change? I mean, it's interesting. There's a book by Jonathan Kirsch called God versus the Gods. And it's a really interesting book about how polytheism, meaning the worship of multiple gods, was much more tolerant than the one God people, the monotheists. The one God monotheists were like, it's our God and there's no other gods, it's starting here in this Torah. And you can't accept. What's interesting about Judaism is the only people who are forbidden to worship other gods are the Jews. They're supposed to worship our God. But other religions want you to give up your God if you're a monotheist and only worship their monotheistic God. Christianity and Islam were very, intent on converting and saying you can't worship not even your one God. If you're a Jew, you have to worship our God. But the polytheists were like, oh God, another God, bring along. It's fine. All gods are welcome. They're all goodwill, and I'll be happy to worship your God. There was this much looser attitude, which I think was probably appealing to the ancient Israelites. And that's why they were always going over to Baal and Ishtar and some of these, including it, not excluding the Jewish God, but saying, well, what's wrong if I have a little idol or a little goddess or whatever? Panina, you're muted.
I think can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the fact that they're mentioning the creation of the world in the same paragraph. I think it was to draw the attention of the people that you cannot just say that any God will do. It's the one that look at our nature. What is our God was able to do? He gave us seas and he gave us the sky and he gave the
Where
wind
it's not,
to breathe.
there's no mention of creation in this part.
No, it's not. But they tell you that this is the God that created whatever. If you just read it a sentence before, that it's the God who created the seas or whatever. You
No,
just
it's
read
just,
it three,
no,
three sentences ago. No?
no, I
So
didn't.
okay, maybe I
Yeah, he just said
connected.
that do not worship any of these things. Do not worship heaven and the sun and the moon and the stars. But God has given other religion.
Not them, yeah, but okay, that's okay. I am misunderstood. I thought
That's
that he
okay.
brought them what God created as a
No,
proof of its powers. That's all.
no.
Okay,
I
that's
want,
fine. I misunderstood it. Okay.
okay, I want, well, we only have like 15 minutes, so I really want to go to the Ten Commandments, but I just want you to look at this idea, which, oh, Brad, go ahead. Yes.
Rabbi, this is really a stupid question, but this whole book could have gone differently. It could have been more of a pep talk. Look what we've been through. We've been through 40 years of wandering in the desert. We've dealt with this, we've dealt with that. Bravo, good for us. And instead, it's a cautionary tale. And why isn't it a pep talk?
Okay, well, that's not Moses' character. However, these people are not known for, they seem to need consequences and boundaries and to understand the rules very clearly. They don't seem to be the type to say, yay for us, we're doing well and we'll keep doing well. They stray. And he even says, if your children's children, I was about to read, forget what's going on and forget everything and go back to idols, they're gonna be denounced, and over and over and over again, which we haven't been able to, we could look at. He keeps saying, you stay in the land if you follow the Torah. You stay in the land if you follow the Torah. If you don't follow the Torah, you're going to lose the land. Now, it's interesting to me. Do you think that's because Moses wanted to be in the land so much that it was so precious to him that, this was like the ultimate gift and, you better take care of it? Or there's this other idea that the land doesn't belong to the Jewish people, but the Jewish people belong to the land. And the land, if you don't live this ethical life, the land will say, no, you can't stay here. There's this Kabbalistic idea that, no, you're going to lose me if you don't stay here. And we lost the land for 2,000 years because of bad behavior. So I don't think human beings, I don't think human beings with pep talks stay in the straight and narrow.
Rabbi, if this talk was delivered today, it would be a pep talk.
Not in some churches, not in some fundamentalist churches, and I don't think in some Orthodox schools. I don't think so.
Well, just think of what happens out on the playing field, on the soccer field, et cetera, et cetera. I think it would be a pep talk. But anyway, that's
I know what you're saying, but
I just think times have changed and we're no longer necessarily in a cautionary tale.
I disagree. I think we're living a cautionary tale right
Yeah.
now.
I think that's what Yom Kippur is all about. Everything you did wrong the last year and do better next year.
Well, that's your own self-recognition, but I think, there's a lot of cautionary tales if we don't stop certain things. Let's just say if we don't have gun control, people are going to go around shooting each other and just say, oh, you're doing great. You didn't kill anyone. Good for you. I don't think it's as effective as being arrested and getting in trouble. So I'm not sure. Oh, you're not at war. Good for you. As opposed to you're in war. And if you commit, atrocities or, what's going on all over the world with Ukraine and everywhere. So I think I think you're giving human beings a lot more credit, Brad, than they actually warrant. And Susan, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think a cautionary tale is realism. You know, the Bible also cautions about too much wealth. And look what happens to too much wealth, you know. I mean, something that's really good. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil and you can be corrupted by it. So I think this is a reality thing. They're not on the football field, but even on the football field, coaches say, don't do it. Well, I haven't been on the football field, but I heard that they also say, watch this, watch that, or this can happen. So
Okay,
it's a
let's
pep
get.
talk with if too much of this, you don't do this, there are going to be some problems.
I mean, you're an inherently good person, Brad, so that a pep talk would work with you. But I don't think people are like you. Most people. That's actually my Rosh Hashanah sermon is about disappointed in people this year. Okay, so let's just go to this because, you know, I want to get to the 10 Commandments. Here they are. First of all, I think it's interesting in the book of Deuteronomy, this idea of Shema Yisrael is said about 3 or 4 times. Here's one of them, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today, and you shall learn them and be careful. Again, he's repeating that, you know, this idea, but let's go to them. Here is the first one. So I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. That is like, you know, it's interesting. I always thought you shall have no other gods before me was part of the second commandment, but apparently it's part of the first commandment. And then the having no idols is part of the second commandment, but they kind of run together. But I want to share this with you. I find it very interesting that God defines God's self as the liberator of slavery. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Not I'm the Lord your God who gave you the Torah or who are giving you the land of Israel or who blessed your your patriarchs or whatever. God's primary identity is that he brought us out of the land of Egypt, that he freed the, downtrodden slaves, which I think if we believe that we're created, in the image of God, what image of God are we talking about? Because there's many images that we could choose from, because God can be pretty punishing in some parts of the Torah. So I think that the one that God chooses, or the writer of the 10 Commandments chooses for God, is the liberator of the downtrodden, of the oppressed. That is God's primary self-identity. And if we're going to live our lives in the image of God, perhaps we need to also work for helping liberating the oppressed and uplifting the downtrodden. So I always see that as a very important choice or name that God chooses for him. I'm saying him, but God's self. It's bigger than him or her or whatever. So, and then you shall have no other gods before me. Oh my God. How many times do we have to hear that? How many times? Which tells us what? So tempting to worship other gods, really hard to believe in an invisible God, really hard to have that faith in whatever, even though they saw the mountain and heard the voice. Very hard, so beyond us. And so it's like got to be reinforced. A pep talk, remember? Okay, so that one we know that, okay, but there's some things. Okay, you shall have no other gods before me. And then it says, you shall, okay, is this part of this? Is this the beginning of the second one, or is the one before me beginning? Wait. Is it, I don't know if this, I always thought this was the first one. And this was part of the second one, but I'm not sure now because I'm looking at the Eitz Chaim and they include this. You shall have no other gods before me as the second one. No, as part of the first one. And then
First one.
You shall not make yourself a carved image or any likeness or anything in the heaven above or in the earth below or that is on the earth. Oh my God, how many times have we heard this? But here's the part that's interesting. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Thousands of generations, actually. So, what does that mean to you? Showing iniquity to the third and fourth generations, to those that hate me. Ben, you're moving your hand around.
I was thinking and speaking of myself, but that, if you cross God, your kids and their kids are going to pay the price. So it's a pretty severe penalty.
What does crossing
Multi-generation,
God? What does crossing God look like?
not following the commandments, the rules, and the statutes, the
Okay,
laws.
that's crossing God. Okay, any other thoughts about this? Cindy and then Merle. Yeah. Cindy, you're muted.
I find it annoying that the reason not to worship other gods is because God gets jealous.
Yeah, that word is a weird word. I'm not sure that's the right translation. Yeah, but it's a negative word. I'm a vindictive, I'm a punishing, I'm watching you. You're gonna be punished in some way. So you find that what? Annoying?
Well, because it's God's ego, the reason that you shouldn't worship other idols. Because
Okay.
I'll be jealous.
Do you think it's only idols or is it anything else? Well, if you don't worship idols, it means you're following the Torah. So yeah. Okay. Merle.
Yeah, I was just going to say pretty much what Cindy said, or what you just said, that if you don't follow whatever rules I've set up, if you don't follow them, our generation, then you're teaching the next generations the wrong way to practice.
You're teaching the wrong generation. Okay,
Teaching
Susan?
the next generation the wrong way to practice.
Right, the next generation. Susan?
Right. Yes, I have two things. One that Cindy brought up with jealous, but we had talked about this before. The word could also mean zealous or
Okay.
passionate or fiery. And this is important to me. And certainly it's very important to God because he wants to set up a just and compassionate civilization. So he should be. So it's not only apparently.
I think zealous better than jealous. I agree with you.
Yes, and those were various definitions that I had. The other thing is what Merle brought up too is parents are role models for children as well as teaching children. So some of the if one parent is a thief or an embezzler or something, it's setting up a thing for the second generation, maybe the second will be the third and on. And it's not only God, it's the behavior of the parents. And then I thought that Ezekiel said, done with this, that we're not going to cause the parents, we're not going to go condemn the second and third and the fourth generation. He said this is not good.
Okay, Brad.
Yeah, I was just going to say that as opposed to original sin, which just goes on forever, or even the House of Atreus and those failings that are vested on generation after generation, here there's a limit. It goes on for 2 or 3 generations. So I think that's a step forward.
I think you're right, but I think it's interesting because if there's corruption, abuse, illegal, immoral behavior in parents, yes, it's going to affect the children. Even traumatically, they become traumatized, and we now know that trauma can be inherited till
Right.
the fourth generation. You can inherit it, it changes your genetic makeup. And it's 1:00, after 1:00. So I want to leave you with this. We just said, the parents can ruin the children and the next generations, but the fourth commandment is honor your mother and honor your father and mother. So are they at odds? Actually, they're not, because then the Talmud goes into a huge list of how you don't have to listen to your parents if they cause you to sin. And even abusive parents can be abandoned. And there's a whole thing about taking care of parents. But just want to point it out that they're saying you can ruin your children, and at the same time, we're saying we have to honor our parents. So our parents should be worthy of the honor that their children are obliged to give them. So it was Shabbat Shalom. It was great
Shabbat
talking to
Shalom.
you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
you're welcome. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you.
Shabbat
Glad to
Thank
see you
you.
feeling
Okay.
feeling good,
Bye.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Shabbat shalom.